I'm Daniel, 36. I work as a courier, just food deliveries, day in and day out. My wife, Emma, is 34. She's a hairdresser. We've been married for 6 years. We live in my apartment, along with her elderly parents. They're both in poor health, and most of the daily care falls on me. She always said she appreciated that. That Friday started like any other. Long hours, heavy traffic, a phone that never stopped buzzing. By evening, I was wiped out. I'd just finished what I thought would be my last drop-off and was about to head home. I'd already swiped in shift on the app. Then another order popped up. High tip, short distance, expensive building. I almost ignored it, almost. But old habits kicked in. One more job. Just one. That decision changed everything. The building had one of those quiet, spotless lobbies. Security desk, soft lighting. I gave the apartment number, took the elevator up, and walked down the hall. I rang the bell. Emma opened the door. At first, my brain stalled, trying to find some explanation. Maybe she was visiting someone from work. Maybe I was wrong. But no, it was her, standing in a robe, hair freshly done, makeup perfect, like she hadn't worked all day at all. She just stared at me, not shocked, more like caught. And then I saw him. A man walked behind her, heading casually into another room like this was his place, like she was his. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask anything. I handed over the food. My hands were cold. Then I turned around and left. The elevator ride down felt like falling. Not physically, just this slow, sinking awareness that something I believed in had just died. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet thought started whispering, "You missed the signs. And now it's too late." I didn't go home right away. After that delivery, after seeing Emma standing there in another man's apartment, I just drove around. No destination, no music, just silence and the dull hum of the road beneath my tires. My hands were still cold. My stomach twisted. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, like what I'd seen didn't happen to me, like it belonged to someone else. But it didn't. That was my wife in his apartment. I ended up parking on a side street near a gas station. I sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, watching people walk in and out of the store. Just normal people, going about their evening, filling up gas, grabbing snacks, laughing on the phone. Meanwhile, I was sitting there trying to process the fact that the woman I came home to every night had another life behind my back. I kept replaying it over and over. The way she looked at me, not surprised, not confused. Guilty. Frozen. She knew the second she opened that door what I'd seen. But she didn't say a word. And I couldn't say one either. I didn't even confront her. I just gave her the food, turned around, and left like a stranger. I was shaking the whole time. My pride wanted to ask what the hell is going on, but my instinct told me I already knew the answer. That moment broke something in me, something I didn't even know could break. I finally got home an hour later. Her parents were asleep, TV still on in the living room. I sat down, didn't even take off my shoes. I stared at the floor for what felt like forever. She still wasn't home. Said she'd had a late client. Of course. When she did come in, maybe 11:30, closer to midnight, she acted normal, calm, tired, said it had been a long day. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't look her in the eyes. I just nodded, told her I'd already eaten. She went to take a shower. I stayed in the kitchen, just sitting there like a ghost. That night, while she slept beside me, I couldn't close my eyes. My brain wouldn't let me. And the more I thought, the more things began to click. The signs had been there, like her new handbag, sleek, expensive looking. I remember asking about it a few weeks ago, and she brushed it off, said one of her longtime clients gave it to her as a gift. I'd even laughed, made a joke about becoming a hairdresser myself if people handed out designer bags for haircuts. I thought she was joking too. She started dressing differently a few months back. More polished, more detail, different perfume. When I noticed, she said she was just trying to attract higher-paying clients. I didn't question it. I work in food delivery. She works with people face-to-face. It made sense at the time. But then there were the nights she stayed late. Last-minute walk-ins, she'd say. Or the schedule got shifted. One time, I even offered to pick her up after work. She said no, told me she had to run errands afterward. That stuck with me. But again, I didn't argue. Why would I? I trusted her. Now I was starting to feel like a fool. I remembered another thing. A few weeks ago, I found a credit card receipt tucked inside one of her coat pockets. Dinner for two at a place we never go to. A really nice place. I brought it up casually. She said she had lunch with a coworker who was going through a divorce and needed support. She told the story so smoothly I didn't even blink. Looking back, I wanted to believe her. But now, I couldn't stop thinking that all of it, every excuse, every laugh, every casual detail had been rehearsed, covered up, layered in just enough truth to keep me from asking questions. And I didn't ask. Not then. But I would. The next day, I woke up before Emma. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the occasional cough from her father in the next room. Life didn't stop just because mine cracked open. Emma stirred eventually, rolled over, gave me a soft morning. Her voice didn't shake. She didn't hesitate. You'd think nothing had happened. Like we were just Daniel and Emma again, living our little routine. Except I wasn't the same man who'd gone out for deliveries the day before. I said, morning back, flat, empty. She didn't seem to notice. She got out of bed, moved through the kitchen like always, coffee, toast, vitamins for her mom. Her movements were automatic. I wondered how long she'd been living this double life. How many mornings she stood there making eggs, knowing the night before she'd been with someone else. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I was watching her like a stranger. Everything she did looked familiar, but felt wrong. I didn't want to explode. Not yet. I wanted to be sure. I wanted more than just a moment at a door. So I started paying attention. I waited until she went into the shower. Then I opened her purse, quick, careful. Nothing obvious. Just her wallet, keys, hand lotion. But then I noticed a small card tucked deep in the side pocket, a business card for a boutique men's clothing store. Not a salon, not a beauty supplier. Just a sleek, black card with a name I didn't recognize. I memorized it. Later that day, while she was out buying groceries, I checked her drawer in the hallway. She kept receipts there sometimes. Tucked between some old appointment slips, I found another restaurant receipt. 2 entrees. Expensive wine. A few nights ago. That same night, she told me she had stayed late at work because someone came in for a full color treatment. She lied to my face. It hurt. Even though I'd already seen enough the night before, even though I knew, seeing it written out like that, in print, brought a different kind of pain. Cold, clean, proof. Still, I didn't confront her. I watched. I waited. I needed to know who he was. And I needed to see how far she'd take it, how long she'd keep pretending everything was fine. Because every smile, every "how was your day?" every innocent question now sounded like an insult. Like she was daring me to notice. And I had. It's a strange feeling living next to someone who doesn't know you've seen the truth. Every day felt like a performance after that. Emma played her role perfectly, the attentive wife, the helpful daughter. Smiling when she needed to, asking me if I was tired after work, telling me about annoying clients. On the surface, everything looked the same. But underneath, I was drifting further and further away from her. She didn't know I'd started paying attention. Not in the casual way I used to, but with intent. I was watching everything. Where she put her phone, when she left the room to take a call, the way she texted with her screen tilted slightly away from me. I was no longer just her husband. I had become a quiet observer, walking through my own house like a stranger, trying to collect pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. One evening, she told me she had to work late again, a bridal hair trial that ran longer than expected. I nodded, didn't say anything. She left around 6:30. I waited 5 minutes, grabbed my jacket, and left too. I didn't even know what I was doing at first. I didn't have a plan. Just this gnawing pressure in my chest that told me I couldn't sit still anymore. I drove around her salon, parked across the street where she couldn't see me. I watched the lights, the sign on the front door, and I waited. It was quiet, too quiet. Around 8:15, the lights inside went off. She never came out. I waited another 20 minutes. Then I got out of the car and walked around the block. There was a back exit to the salon, one I'd completely forgotten about. A few steps down, just behind a side alley, I stood across the street, leaning against a post, and watched. At 8:47, she came out. Not alone. He was with her. Same man I'd seen at the apartment. Tall, expensive coat, smug body language. I watched them get into his car. She smiled at him. She touched his arm. The kind of touch I hadn't felt from her in months. They drove off. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor while she slept beside me, again pretending nothing was wrong. her breathing slow and steady, like she had nothing to hide. And in that moment, I realized something that made my stomach twist. She wasn't afraid. She didn't think I would ever figure it out. She thought I was too distracted, too trusting, too stupid. That hurt more than the affair itself. I started keeping a small notebook, not to write poetry or reflections, just simple notes. Dates, times, patterns, places. I wasn't trying to trap her. I just needed something solid, something real, because everything around me felt fake. The way she smiled at me in the morning, the way she reminded me to buy her mom's medicine, the way she said "love you" out of habit before walking out the door. It was all rehearsed. I wasn't going to confront her with anger. I didn't want yelling or crying or drama. I wanted truth. I wanted it on paper, in front of her. I wanted to look her in the eye and ask her one question. When did you stop being mine? I couldn't get his face out of my head. That man, the one I saw walk behind her in the apartment, the same man who picked her up behind the salon. Tall, confident, like someone used to getting what he wants. And Emma, she moved around him like she belonged there. She didn't look nervous. She didn't act guilty. She just was with him, naturally, comfortably. It made me sick to admit it, but they had chemistry. The kind of unspoken familiarity that doesn't come from one night or two. It comes from routine, from time, from intimacy. I kept going over the moment she saw me at his door. The way she froze. She didn't panic. She didn't chase me down. She didn't even call or text afterward to explain. That told me everything I needed to know. She knew she'd been caught, and she chose to ignore it. At first, I thought maybe she was afraid. Maybe she didn't know how to deal with the fallout. But the more I watched her, the more I realized she wasn't acting like someone who made a mistake. She was acting like someone who had already moved on. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the betrayal itself, not even the lies, but the way she could look me in the eye every day and carry on like nothing had happened, like I didn't matter. So I turned my focus to him. Who was this man? Where did she meet him? How long had it been going on? And more importantly, what did he have that I didn't? It became a kind of obsession. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I couldn't. I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I wanted facts. I started with the business card I found in her purse. It had a name and a store, men's clothing, high-end, downtown. I Googled it. Simple search. The store had an Instagram. I scrolled through, looking at faces, staff, clients, event photos. And then I saw him. Same man, standing next to some kind of luxury car, holding a drink at what looked like a launch event. Tag on the post gave his full name. I clicked it. His profile was private, but the bio was enough. Senior investment advisor, private wealth. His firm's name was familiar. I delivered to that building a few times. Upper floors, quiet, expensive suits. Offices with glass walls and espresso machines that cost more than my car. I clicked through public posts he was tagged in. Champagne events, private dinners, ski trips, rooftop lounges. That kind of lifestyle. That's who she was with. Not just some random fling. This man had money, status, confidence. He lived in a different world. One Emma had apparently stepped into without ever looking back. It didn't take long before I found a photo of the two of them. Blurry, from a distance, but it was her. Same coat, same hair, same smile. They weren't hiding, just hiding from me. The worst part? She was glowing. The kind of lightness I hadn't seen in her face for months. Maybe years. And I started to question everything. Had she ever looked at me like that? Had I just missed it? Or had it never been there to begin with? I sat there with my phone in my hand, heart pounding, realizing I now knew the truth, fully, completely. No more speculation. No more vague suspicions. It was real. It was happening. And she had no idea that I knew exactly who he was. But I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt cold, focused, because now I wasn't just the man being lied to. I was the man preparing to confront everything. And when that moment came, I didn't want yelling or denial. I wanted her to see that I knew, down to the last detail. Now that I knew everything, his name, his face, even what he did for a living, it gave me this strange, bitter sense of control. Not the kind of control you feel when you're steering your life forward, but the kind that comes from finally seeing the full shape of the wreckage. Cold, clear truth. The worst kind. I wasn't chasing shadows anymore. I had the answers. I knew what she was doing. I knew where she went. I knew who she was seeing and exactly what she was doing with him. But here's the thing no one tells you. When you hold the kind of truth that could set fire to your entire life, you don't always feel victorious. You don't always act right away. You wait. That's what I did. I didn't storm in. I didn't pack her bags. I didn't yell or throw accusations. Because deep down, I wasn't ready. Not because I was scared of her reaction, I wasn't. That fear had died the moment she opened that door. What I felt now wasn't fear. It was exhaustion. A kind of soul-deep tiredness that made it hard to even speak. But I needed to see it play out. I needed to see how far she was willing to go with the lie. How far she'd carry the performance. I wanted to know, painfully and precisely, how much of our marriage she had already thrown away. If there was anything left in her that remembered who we used to be. So I kept the mask on. I got up in the mornings and made her coffee like I always did. I still kissed her cheek before leaving for work. I folded the towels and made sure her parents had what they needed. I asked how her day was, even when the words tasted like ash in my mouth. I smiled at the right times. I nodded when she told stories about her clients. I said, "I love you," more out of habit than hope. And all the while, I watched. She started smiling more. Not the guilty, hesitant smiles I saw that night in the hallway. These were relaxed, natural. She looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Like whatever tension she carried during those first few days after I saw her had vanished. She must have convinced herself I never recognized her, that maybe the lighting had thrown me off, or I hadn't really processed what I saw. Or maybe she thought I saw, but didn't want to know. That thought made my stomach turn. That she could mistake my silence for weakness, for submission. It disgusted me, but I kept it inside. One evening we were sitting on the couch together. Just like any other night, she had her head resting on my shoulder. One of her favorite shows was on in the background, but neither of us was really watching it. She was scrolling on her phone, relaxed, casual, completely unaware of the war going on inside me. I stared at the reflection of her screen in the lens of her glasses. Just the flicker of colors, scrolling movement. She was moving through something quickly. Messages? Photos? Who knew? She let out a soft laugh and turned slightly toward me. "It's just a meme," she said. "From a coworker." I nodded. Didn't say a word. She smiled and went back to her phone. My jaw was clenched so tight it ached. She didn't notice. She didn't sense the cold distance that had grown between us. Or maybe she did and simply didn't care anymore. Either way, that moment hit me in a way I didn't expect. That's when I knew. She was gone. Not physically, not yet. Her clothes were still in the closet. Her toothbrush still in the bathroom. But emotionally? Spiritually? She'd left a long time ago. I was just the last one to figure it out. I was holding on to a version of her that no longer existed and hadn't for a while. And here's the part that cuts the deepest. I still loved her. Even knowing what I knew. Even after watching her walk into another man's arms. There was still a part of me that wanted to protect her. To keep her safe. That old instinct to make things better, to carry the load, to stay strong, it hadn't died yet. That same love that had held our lives together for 6 years was still in me, still breathing. But now it made me sick. That loyalty had become a weight, a chain, and I was carrying it alone. I started resenting it, resenting myself for still caring, for still wanting to believe in someone who had already walked away from me in every way that mattered. And once that resentment started growing, something else began to take shape in its place. I didn't plan for revenge. I didn't fantasize about confrontations or dramatic exits. That's not me. I started preparing for something else. Not a fight, but freedom. Because the longer I sat in silence, the more I realized I wasn't just watching her lie. I was finally waking up from one myself. After everything I'd seen, and what I was slowly starting to accept, I began to notice things I hadn't really paid attention to before. Or maybe I had. Maybe all those little red flags had always been there, waving quietly in the background while I was too focused on keeping things steady at home. Maybe I had just chosen not to see them. Chosen comfort over confrontation. But now my eyes were different. Sharper. Cold. Watching everything like a man suddenly living with a stranger. Emma had a pattern. It wasn't random, it wasn't impulsive, it was structured, controlled, intentional. Tuesdays and Thursdays were always her late nights. She'd come home around 9:30, sometimes later. Always the same excuse. The salon had run long. A client had come in last minute. Someone had booked a double process that pushed everything back. I used to nod along. No questions asked. I believed her. Of course I did. She was one of the hardest working people I knew. Her dedication had never been something I doubted. But now, I saw the pattern. And more than that, I saw the choreography. She had a system. She used those nights to disappear into another version of herself, a version that didn't belong to me. Before she'd leave the house, she'd change clothes. Nothing flashy. She was too smart for that. Just enough to look different. A nicer sweater. A sleeker pair of boots. Once I noticed she changed into earrings she never wore to work. And perfume, not the familiar scent I'd gotten used to smelling on her collar or in our sheets. This one was more subtle. A few dabs behind the ear. Maybe the wrist. Something expensive. Something intimate. Not meant for clients. Meant for him. She had two faces. There was the face she brought home, tired, preoccupied, emotionally distant. The Emma who barely made it through dinner without checking her phone, who smiled out of habit but never with her eyes, who seemed to always be in a rush to get to bed, or to the next day, or just away from me. And then there was the other face, the one she saved for someone else. I'd seen glimpses of it in that hallway, the night I delivered to that apartment. She looked fresh, polished, energized. That version of her had vanished from our house a long time ago, and I hadn't even realized it. Her phone became a fortress. It was never out of her sight, always face down, locked. She used to let it rest on the kitchen counter while we cooked or watched TV. Now it never left her side. Bathroom, shower, bedroom, it was always there. I knew her passcode, but even when I managed to check, there was nothing. She'd started deleting everything. Messages, call logs. Even the recently deleted folder in the cloud was wiped clean. Like she knew what I might try. Like she was preparing for the possibility of being found out. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was an affair curated, protected, sustained. She wasn't just cheating. She was careful. She was committed to it. Committed to him. And that realization hit differently than rage. It was colder than anger. It left me hollow. Like someone had scooped out the center of my chest and left nothing in its place but an echo. This wasn't an accident. She had built something with him. And one afternoon, something finally slipped. A crack in the perfect routine. She was in the shower. I was folding laundry nearby, trying to act like everything was normal when her smartwatch buzzed on the nightstand. Just a single vibration. I wasn't trying to snoop. It lit up, and my eyes caught the preview without meaning to. Miss you already. Thursday. That was it. No name. No emojis. Just a quiet little sentence that might have meant nothing to someone else. But to me, it confirmed everything. Thursday night, she'd be with him. When she came home that evening, she walked through the front door like it was just another Thursday, set her bag down, kicked off her shoes, let out that same sigh she always did when she wanted to seem tired. She smiled at me like everything was fine, said she was starving. I told her I'd saved some leftovers and heated them up for her. She sat at the table, thanking me like she always had. Ate like nothing was wrong. Told me about some client who was preparing for a wedding and needed a trial run on her hair. She even joked about how bridezillas were getting younger and more intense. It was almost impressive, honestly, the way she could lie with such grace, with so much ease. Every gesture, every word was measured, natural, seamless, like she'd rehearsed it, or maybe didn't even need to rehearse anymore. Maybe it had just become her new normal. But I wasn't angry, not anymore. I wasn't even heartbroken in that moment. That part had passed, or maybe it had calcified into something else. I just sat there, watching her across the table, and realized I didn't recognize the person speaking to me. The voice was familiar. The face, the hands, the small gestures, they all belonged to Emma. But the soul behind it? Gone. I wasn't looking at the woman I married. I wasn't even looking at the woman who betrayed me. I was looking at a stranger, one who happened to share the same body as the person I used to love. And that's what hurt most, because I still missed her. Not the person sitting across from me, telling lies and eating leftovers, but the woman I thought I had, the woman I wanted to believe in. But she was gone, and she wasn't coming back. The human mind can only take so much before it starts unraveling. I didn't break all at once. I didn't scream or smash something or demand answers. It wasn't like in the movies. It happened in small moments, like standing in the shower too long, just staring at the tile, like forgetting what I was doing halfway through folding laundry, like waking up at 3 a.m. and checking if she was next to me, not because I was worried she wasn't, but because I almost forgot we were still pretending. And every time she smiled at me, it felt like a knife being pushed in slower. She thought I didn't know. And maybe that was the part that broke me most. That she thought I was so blind, so small, that I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me. I started asking myself harder questions. Was I not enough? Did she ever love me the way I loved her? How long was I going to let this keep eating me alive? I still hadn't told anyone. I hadn't confronted her. I hadn't even written her a note. I just existed, quiet, numb. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't scared of the truth anymore. I was scared of what the lie had turned me into. And I knew I was getting close to the moment when I'd either speak or explode. Either way, something had to happen. Because pretending to be okay was destroying me faster than the betrayal itself. I lasted longer than I thought I would. Each day I woke up, I told myself I could hold out a little more. Just keep going. Keep the mask on. Keep pretending I didn't know what she was doing behind my back, what she was doing to me. But something changes when you know the truth. You can't look at someone the same way once you've seen who they really are. It was a quiet Sunday. Her parents were out at a doctor's appointment. I stayed home. She stayed too. Said she needed to catch up on housework. We were in the same space, like we used to be, but nothing about it felt familiar. She scrolled on her phone at the kitchen table. I sat on the couch, trying to focus on the TV, but I couldn't tell you a single thing that was playing. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, and I snapped. It wasn't a dramatic moment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even plan to speak. The words just came out, flat and steady. How long has it been going on? She froze. I didn't need to see her face to know what was there. I already knew. I'd known since the night she opened that apartment door and saw me standing there with a food bag in my hand. That moment was burned into my memory, her eyes widening, lips parting slightly like she was about to say something, then saying nothing at all. She never brought it up, never apologized, never asked me if I was okay. She just came home later that night, told me she was tired, and went to bed. That silence told me everything. And now, as I stood behind her in our kitchen, I realized something else. She'd made peace with her lie. She was content to keep living both lives, as long as I didn't get in the way, as long as I stayed quiet, as long as I remained the version of myself who trusted her. But I wasn't that man anymore. She didn't answer, didn't try to lie, didn't ask what I meant. There was nothing, just the air between us growing heavier by the second. I waited for her to say something, anything, but what could she possibly say that wouldn't sound hollow now? I told her I'd seen her, at his place. When she opened the door, still nothing. And in that silence, I realized she wasn't going to fight for us. Not even a little. She had already crossed that line. Not just the one where you sleep with someone else, but the one where you stop caring how much it breaks the person who loves you. That broke me more than the affair. I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want excuses. I didn't even want the details anymore. I just wanted to get away from her. So I left. No threats. No warnings. No final words. I needed space. I needed air. I needed to feel like I was a person again, not just the background character in someone else's double life. She stayed behind, didn't follow, didn't call. And that told me more than any confession ever could. I stayed out that whole day. I didn't have a plan. I just drove, through neighborhoods we used to walk together, past places that now felt foreign, through the city like I was trying to outrun my own life. I sat in my car until it got dark, thought about calling someone. But who do you call when the person you used to trust most is the one who tore your world apart? When I finally went home, the house was quiet. Her parents had returned, asleep behind their door. Emma was sitting in the living room, still dressed. She looked like she hadn't moved in hours. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just said, "Do you want to talk?" I didn't, but I nodded anyway. She started slow, fumbling with her words like she wasn't used to being honest. She said it hadn't been planned, that it started with a conversation, a drink, then turned into something more, that she felt like someone again with him, seen, desired. That with me, it had all become routine, obligations, her parents, money stress, long days. I could barely look at her, not because she was crying, she wasn't, but because her version of our life sounded like a story I'd never read. Cold, distant, like none of the sacrifices I made ever mattered. I asked her if she loved him. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "I don't know." That was worse than yes. She said she didn't want to leave, but also didn't know how to fix it. She still cared about me, she said. She was sorry. She wanted to try therapy. Rebuild. I asked one thing. Would you have told me if I hadn't seen you that night? She shook her head. That was all I needed to know. The next few days were hell. She stayed in the house. We slept in the same space, but spoke very little. Her parents didn't notice anything, or pretended not to. I kept doing my job. I kept moving. But inside, I was breaking down. Quietly. Completely. I knew I couldn't stay like that. Couldn't keep breathing the same air, eating at the same table, hearing her keys in the lock every evening. That sound used to mean home. Now it meant something else entirely. One night, I packed a small bag and told her I was leaving, just for a while. She asked where I was going. I said I didn't know yet. Maybe to my brother's. Maybe a motel. Maybe nowhere. I just needed distance. She nodded. She didn't argue. As I stood by the door, she said, Daniel, if you decide not to come back, just promise me one thing. I waited. Don't hate me forever. I didn't answer. I didn't know if I could make that promise. I left without another word. The first night away was quiet in the wrong kind of way. No background noise, no cough from her dad, no clinking of dishes in the sink. But I slept better than I had in months. I took a week for myself, thought about everything, the years we spent together, the life we built, and the way she dismantled it piece by piece behind my back. Part of me still wanted to fix it. Part of me still loved her. But I couldn't live a life where I was always wondering if she'd do it again. And then something happened that changed everything. I got a message from the guy, the one she cheated with. He found me through social media. His message was short, smug. Said something like, didn't mean for things to go down like that, man. Hope you're good. Hope I'm good. It hit me harder than anything Emma had said. He wasn't sorry. He didn't respect me. He didn't care what he took from me. And she had chosen him. I deleted the message. Blocked him. But that was the moment I stopped doubting. When I returned, it was only to collect the rest of my things. Emma was home. She didn't ask questions. Just stood silently while I packed. Her face looked older, tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Before I left, I told her I'd spoken to a lawyer, that I'd be filing for divorce. She nodded. There were tears this time, but she didn't beg. I think she knew it was over long before I did. I stayed with my brother for a few weeks. Took time to rebuild. Slowly, I started taking longer delivery shifts, partly for the money, mostly for the distraction. I didn't tell many people. I didn't want pity. I just wanted peace. A month later, I got a message from Emma's mother. She wrote, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just want you to know I never blamed you. And I'm sorry for everything that happened. You were good to us. I didn't reply, but I read it more than once. The truth is, I still don't hate Emma. I don't love her anymore either. She was my home once. And then she wasn't. What surprised me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how strong I had to become after it. How much it stripped away. And how much it forced me to rebuild. I never imagined my marriage would end like this. Quietly. Without a fight. Without screaming. But maybe that's the most honest ending betrayal can have. Not fire. Not rage. Just truth. And a man walking away from someone who stopped choosing him. And maybe that's enough.